All right, our last group.
But not least.
Aha, you've been waiting. Thank you for waiting. From the Department of Health and Human Services, ClinicalTrials.gov, with Alexa Mcrae and Ellen Bertie.
Hello, greetings. I truly am thrilled and honored to be here today. I had type 1 diabetes for 35 years before I started to experience a serious complication. My blood sugar would drop extremely low and I would lose consciousness. In September of 2000, I started to hear about an exciting new procedure that had been approved for clinical trials in the US. I found out more details on the web, and one of the first sites I visited was ClinicalTrials.gov, and a wealth of information exploded before me. I saw details of the procedure, risks involved, eligibility criteria, and where the trials were held. It was all right there. One of the sites was at NIH, which is close to my home. I called right away to set things in motion. And in June of 2001, I received an islet cell transplant, which has cured me of type 1 diabetes. I was telling everybody about my success. My neighbor was just arriving home one evening when I rushed across the street to tell her. And I said, I knew she worked at NIH, but we'd never discussed all the details. And I told her about where I'd found out about the procedure at ClinicalTrials.gov. She looked at me and she said, Ellen, clinical trials is my project. And we were both astonished at what a coincidence this was. I am eternally grateful to my neighbor through ClinicalTrials.gov for all the extraordinary help she has given me. And now let me introduce that neighbor and friend, Alexa Mcrae.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ellen, and good afternoon, everyone. Before ClinicalTrials.gov was available, someone in Ellen's situation needed a stroke of luck, a determined doctor, or someone who knew someone to find information about human subject studies. And even with such an ally, there were roadblocks along the way. What information there was fragmented, hard to find, and often very hard to understand. Clinical trials are at the heart of development of new drugs and other therapies. The results of clinical trials have enormous potential for improving medical practice and therefore the health and well-being of humanity at large. In late 1997, because of the determined efforts of patients and patient advocacy groups who demanded access to information about clinical trials, Congress passed a law requiring a central online registry for publicly and privately funded trials. The goal, very simply, was to give the public access to information on studies of potential treatments for a wide range of diseases and other conditions. Congress asked NIH, the nation's largest medical research organization, to create a resource that would provide one-stop shopping for information on clinical trials, no matter where the trials were being conducted, who was doing the research, or who was supplying the funding. The National Library of Medicine, which is where I work, a division of the NIH, was asked to take the lead because of its strong record in making high-quality health information available not only to researchers, doctors, and other healthcare workers, but also to patients and their families. Because people needing information about experimental treatments may not always be computer savvy, and often do not have medical expertise, we adopted two guiding principles for the design of ClinicalTrials.gov: ease of understanding and ease of use. Access to the information in ClinicalTrials.gov is simple and straightforward. We provide important information about human research, including the potential benefits and risks of participating in clinical trials. And to help users learn as much as they can about their particular medical condition, ClinicalTrials.gov points them in what I call a just-in-time fashion to the National Library of Medicine's Medline Plus, a web resource that contains extensive consumer-friendly information on hundreds of health topics. When ClinicalTrials.gov became public in February of 2000, just a few months before Ellen actually accessed it, we had information on 4,400 trials. Today, that is more than doubled. We now list over 10,000 clinical studies sponsored by NIH, other federal agencies, and private industry. Studies are taking place in all 50 states in the United States and over 90 countries worldwide. Most gratifying to us, of course, has been the reaction of our users. ClinicalTrials.gov receives about 3 million page views per month and hosts approximately 16,000 visitors every day. Thousands of sites linked to ClinicalTrials.gov, including medical libraries, voluntary health organizations, hospitals, and other healthcare centers. ClinicalTrials.gov is a rich, continually updated resource on medical research studies. Our primary overriding goal is to provide patients, their families, and other interested individuals with high-quality, reliable health information. After all, Ellen, other patients, and you, the public, have a right to the latest and most accurate information that affects your health and well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Lee Shore.
I have a factual question, and I'm sorry if this was in here and I missed it. If that clinical trial that you discovered when you went online had been over and completed, would it still be up there?
On the website, it lists whether they are currently recruiting or whether it is closed or whether they haven't even started recruiting yet. So it lists the status.
If it had been completed and the discovery made that this works, is the assumption that then your doctor would have known about it and therefore you wouldn't have needed the website to find it?
The discovery is that, yes, it would then be available to treat all people with diabetes.
Bill Klinger.
Yeah, I understand you do not do any kind of quality control of these clinical trials. In other words, you don't vet them ahead of time before
The
they
trials
go on the site.
themselves, no.
Do you have any sort of disclaimer? In other words, of
Well,
responsibility
let me
for
make
that?
clear what it is that we do take responsibility for. Well, there's a whole process in the development of drugs and other therapies in this country that is, of course, heavily regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. At the NIH, for example, we fund thousands of clinical trials all around the country. That goes through a very rigorous peer review process that goes, that takes some months and so on, and there's follow-up to that. Any one of these grants could have multiple trials associated with them. What we did in the design of this system is that we found trusted partners for all of our information about clinical trials. So that's exactly how we guarantee the quality of the information about the trials. The quality of the trials themselves is, of course, vetted by peers and also by institutional review boards and so on. So there's a whole infrastructure. The information is vetted by trusted intermediaries at every one of our data provider sites, and we are now up to about 220 groups, including pharmaceutical companies, that are providing data to us. Our trusted partners with regard to working with the pharmaceutical companies are not the companies themselves, but rather the FDA, which is in the position to regulate them.
Additional questions here? Yes, Carl.
Clearly, this provides an enormously valuable service to the public and probably the doctors as well. But in terms of the innovation itself, how would you distinguish this from other web-based data sources that are increasingly are becoming available to the public?
I think that's a good question and a fair question. There are a number of things that we've done in this project that distinguish it, I think, from some others that you may have seen. One is in the area of process itself, how we went about collecting the information, and the other is in partnering that with information technology. So let me talk about both of them. In the first case, with regards to process, while we had a law, there was a law, it is one thing to have a law, as many of you know, and a very different thing to implement that law. Extremely difficult process in many cases. So what we needed to do then is we needed to get buy-in. Even though we had a law, and I always had the law in my back pocket when I was dealing with people, we did a fair amount of negotiation with our potential data providers, because for them it was extra work. Even if they had if they thought it was a good thing to do, and most of them did, it's extra work for them. So how did we address that? Well, essentially, in a nutshell, we did the work for them. That is to say, we couldn't collect the information for them, but we could create an infrastructure that would allow them to do that in the most straightforward and easiest way. So that's where the technology partnership came in. We had very high quality folks working on building the technical infrastructure behind the scenes. We have put in, I run the research division at the National Library of Medicine. We've put in the last 15 years of our research in language processing and other kinds of technical innovations behind the scenes in ClinicalTrials.gov that people never see. So for example, if you mistype the name of your condition, which happens quite often, we will fix that for you. If you put in a more lay language term like heart attack, we will find all of the trials on myocardial infarction. And that's because we have a rich source of vocabulary and other language kinds of processing behind the scenes. So I think the combination of working with all of our stakeholders from day one, the very first thing I did when I started the project was to bring all of these people together and get their input as to what kind of data we would be putting out there, and very importantly, how we could ensure sustainability of this information. We refresh this database every night, because we do not want the situation that you were raising, where Ellen comes to the site, it says that this trial is recruiting patients, she calls up and the trial is closed. That would be a very disappointed person and a very bad outcome.
To follow up Carl's question, I'm afraid our time is now running out, so if you could be brief about this, please. Last year we did give an award to Gov.1, if you'll recall. First Gov, sorry, yeah, and which was it was the first government-wide comprehensive effort to provide data to citizens, and it was updated every night. They came in over the weekends when there were hurricanes, things of that sort. Mm-hmm. I'm trying in my own mind to distinguish that program from this program in terms of its innovative quality. Mm-hmm.
As far the First Gov site, we are included, of course, in First Gov, because right. The idea is that maybe the best way to put it is to say that First Gov is a gateway, is a front door that you walk into to get to all of these other various sites. In the system that we have created, we have the data, we bring the data in every night. We basically massage those data, and we are able to contextualize that information. It's this notion of the just-in-time information that is critical.
I guess
so let me just give you a quick example so you understand what I mean by...
they have just-in-time too. If we were to award this,
yes.
Would we be giving the innovation, the same question I was trying to pursue earlier with the other program, does it in effect recognize basically the same innovation as First Gov, or is it something different?
No, I actually believe it's quite different in the sense that we put the information, the health information, in a context. So, for example, if you've come to a trial that is on Alzheimer's, once you're looking at that record for that Alzheimer's trial, you will be linked immediately to other very high quality information about Alzheimer's. Not, here's another health site that you might consider, but right here is the information that you might need to read about to understand the basics, the underpinnings, the genetics underpinnings, and so forth of Alzheimer's.
Kathleen?
I think, just to build on what David is saying, the question is, somebody looks at you and says, that's a great innovation. I want to do what? What would they do differently in their situation because they've learned from your innovation?
Basically, I think that, again, it comes back down to process and technology. We've put very sophisticated information technology behind the scenes, but the process, that is to say, involving all of the stakeholders from day one and not waiting and then pushing something on them that they are no longer able to do.
All right, we've run out of time. Susan, you have one more question.
Quick. If you update the information every night, I'm trying to get to what the innovation is, then that means all the people that are running clinical trials have to keep supplying you that information,
That's right?
And how does that happen?
That's right. Well, because again, we have built a system called the Protocol Registration System that's web-based, that we haven't talked about here at all, but allows people in a very easy fashion to put their data into the system.
Thank you both. I will tell you, Alexa Mcrae, that when we asked your site evaluator, very valuable conversation we had with him, Ted Marmer, said, "What's really innovative about this?" He said, "Alexa Mcrae."
That's the truth.
So Alexa Mcrae and Ellen Bertie, thank you both very much.